Right, good morning, anyone, everyone, myself. How we doing? Have we got enough coffee? So last time out we looked at some circuits and bits and pieces. Um, this time, if it's not too loud, no. This time we're going to skip a few exercises and look at confined areas. And what I'm going to try and do, if everything works, is have a look at a few confined areas that I've either been to, in which case, when this hits YouTube, I will link the real life videos below, or ones that I need to go to fairly soon, so we're going to have a look at them. I used to work. How good is this? That little building there with the awning on it. I used to work in there. So we're going to head over to our first site, assuming I can find it. Oh, I know what's wrong. Yes, now we're getting there. Let's go a wee bit faster. Yes, we'll have a look at doing some confined areas. The first thing you do when you do any confined area is your aircraft needs to be capable of hovering and taking off out of a small space, which usually means vertical. To do that, in the back of all the flight manuals, in your performance pages, you can enter the aircraft's weight, the temperature and the pressure altitude that you're at, and it will tell you whether the aircraft can hover in ground effect, whether it can hover out of ground effect. For any confined area landing or takeoff, you need to make sure the aircraft can hover out of ground effect so that it can go vertically. There are a few tricks people do with Robinsons when you could fly at a minimum power required speed of about 55 knots and see what manifold pressure the aircraft is using. But it only kind of works with Robinsons. You're far better off just using the flight manual. So I'll tell you what we'll do then. We're going to use, let me just pause it right there. So we're going to use this little site here as our confined area. So before we land there, we need to check the suitability of the site based on 5 S's, which is size. Is this site here big enough for the aircraft? Now, if you're new to landing off airfield, you want something at least half the size of a football field. If you're a bit more advanced, you can get smaller sites. The shape of the site is quite important. This is rectangular, so ideally you want to make your approach and departure along the long edge, subject to what's at either end. And what's the next S is our surroundings. So we have trees this side, a building here. So the best approach, although it's got a road in the way, is going to be along this long field here, missing the building, into the site there. The surface and the slope is difficult to check from any altitude, so we can check that again when we get a bit lower. Then what we need to do is set ourselves up a circuit so that we can fly around and land here without losing sight of it. So probably the best thing to do would be to run up this road, go across this road, and then use the gap in the trees here so that we can come, that's our crosswind leg, that's our downwind leg, that's our base leg, and then we can turn right and come in from that direction. So we'll give it a go, see what happens. We're really high, so we might have to go around a couple of times to lose the height. We'll bring the speed back. So approaches to confined areas, you always want to make them low and slow. What you don't want to do is get into a situation where you're descending quickly whilst going slowly, because you may end up getting the aircraft into a state called vortexing, or the Americans call it settling with power. This is where the aircraft's downwash recirculates around the tips of the rotor blades and effectively stalls the rotor blades. We're coming down quite quick, but I don't want to rush it, so keep a little bit of speed up. Yeah, that'll do. Nice and slow. We'll keep going around now down our little road. There's our road, because the danger is, as you lose height, without reference points, you'll lose where your sight is. Well, there's our building. There's our gap in the trees. Make sure the aircraft doesn't accelerate. Could look out for wires, particularly in hedgerows, going and spanning the little gaps. So as we get closer, we can see there is a bit of a slope on our site. We'll go around the edge of the building. As I've been playing nothing since RimWorld for the last week, or a few days at least, we'll see how dodgy my landings are. Well, that's not bad. Right in the middle of our site. A little bit of an upslope. Depending on how big the slope is, you never normally park the aircraft nose upslope, unless you're just letting people off. Because with all the weight in the nose of the pilot, if you then get out, the aircraft will fall onto its tail. So taking off, we want to do a towering takeoff. We don't want to take off along the ground in case we hit anything, such as wires and cables that we didn't know were there. And if we take off the way we just came, we've got a nice long run out. It's downhill. Let's get rid of the map. These maps are rubbish. It'd be nice to have a topographical map that actually showed the ground. Okay, we'll back away from the slope a little bit so we don't run the risk of hitting it with our tail as we turn around. Point it the direction we want it to go. Give it loads of gas. Take it up to maximum power. Get the aircraft climbing on the spot. And then start moving forwards. And then we might just head out over Harwich and Felixstowe ports quickly. And then we'll move the helicopter so I can have a look at a site that I've got to go into next week. Biggest things that can go wrong in a confined area: hitting something, usually something you knew was there, like a tree or wires. So just because you know it's there and you've identified it, don't ignore it. It's still a threat. Overpitching, meaning the aircraft is too heavy and you can't climb away vertically. And then the hazards that the aircraft actually presents to people on the ground. Horse riding especially, or horse riders, can get spooked by the aircraft's noise. Domestic livestock. So just bear in mind that when you're landing somewhere, if it is a busy site, as in there's lots of animals and people around, just give yourself a couple of orbits so that the people on the ground appreciate there's a helicopter there, and then make your approach nice and slow so that you don't terrify everybody. Where's the nearest place I can set this? Can't do two things at once. Just trying to see if there's a particular house. Probably going way too fast. The house I'm thinking of would be about there, but that's quite a nice confined area where the woodland is there, where there's a big gap in the trees. Let's run into there just for a giggle. We'll use the bank of the river as our reference point. Slow the aircraft down now. We know we have enough power because we've just done one. And we'll do our reconnaissance this time as we go into the site. If you're ever unhappy with an approach to a confined area, just do a go around, same as at an airfield. Go around, have another go. Really slow this time because we're not going to get, we don't have a big run in, we just got the trees, so we're going to have to try and come to a hover, or aim to come to a hover above the trees on our side of the site, and from there move forwards and down into the site. We're not actually going to come to a hover, but that's what we're going to aim for. This looks like a good little site. This is actually not far off, I think, where the house that I was looking for actually is. Certainly the slope looks about right. This site, in the real world, would be quite an advanced site, not something you tackle lightly. Especially with all this slope, we're going to go up the slope, try and find a flatter bit to land on. See, that's the thing with confined areas. They look tiny from the air and massive when you're on the ground. Right, what are we doing? Okay, we're going to go out, same way we came in. Because this site is really small, rather than doing a spot turn, hopefully, I'm going to try and turn the aircraft around the tail to minimise the risk of hitting it into a tree. And then we'll give it full power and get out of dodge. And we're going to part along the coastline rather than out over the water, just in case you get an emergency and you need to come back down again. Just keep the grass beneath your arse. Right, let's whiz over to the port. And then we'll reposition and go down to our next site. See if I can find this one.